and welcome to Wicked Curious Radio. I am your mystery maven, Roxie Zwicker from New England Curiosities, along with my sidekick, the amazing Ken.
Hello.
And the professor, Luke Lassie, who's waving behind the window there. And
the camera's up, so that's new and different.
I was going to say,
how about that?
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
I know. we won't expect it to happen every time, but
No.
we'll take it today. Of course, we are a show of the mysterious, the macabre, the strange, and the wicked curious.
Always wicked curious.
Always wicked curious. So we just did something that, well, I shouldn't say we. I shouldn't say we, because I actually did a ghost tour on Saturday in Portsmouth for kind of post-Valentine's Day, the day after Valentine's Day.
Even though it was freezing.
Even though it was absolutely freezing, Ken was nice enough to sit in the car and keep the car warm with a nice warm drink for me when I was done. Didn't he just go all outdoors, Lou?
I made the sacrifice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that was...
She did chug that hot drink right down.
I honestly can't tell if she's happy about that or a little angered by that.
Don't be fooled.
Don't be fooled.
I flipped back and forth like 3 times during that whole comment. No, she's not happy.
Yeah, you can take
she's
that.
happy. No, she's not happy.
Yeah.
No,
Mysterious indeed.
Ken volunteered to make sure that he held down that portion
Right.
of the evening. Nicely done, Ken.
But a good time was had by all. though.
Actually, a good time was had by all. I was a little bit concerned because it was probably about 28 degrees, and we had a sold out tour. We don't normally do walking tours off season, January, February,
Although
March.
that was better than the night before when it was about 7 degrees.
Yeah.
So 24 was a plus.
So it's still under freezing though.
Yes.
Yeah, I looked at my phone that day and it said it's going to be 7 degrees warmer today, and 7 degrees warmer was like 24.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
take it.
Thanks.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Sweet.
But of course, it was one of those wonderful tours where it was greeted at the end with the resounding sound of mittens clapping.
There's nothing like
There's
mitten
nothing like
applause.
mittens clapping. But it was great. Everybody was really wonderful. In fact, we didn't lose a single person on the tour.
You had like couples on anniversaries and
We
everything.
did. We had couples
Really?
on anniversaries. We had people that couldn't celebrate Valentine's Day because they were working, so they had come out to take the tour.
The Saturday after is fair.
Yeah, Saturday
To
after.
celebrate
Yeah, you can.
Valentine's.
Yeah,
It was just the very next day.
Yeah, if you even choose to.
Yeah, but
to
you've got a
celebrate that.
pre-qualified crowd. If they're doing a walking tour in Portsmouth, New Hampshire in February, and they're buying it willingly,
Yes,
they're hardy souls.
They have
they
to. They have to
were.
Yeah,
know.
they're down for it.
Yeah.
they were. They were bundled up and had their scarves and stuff on, and it was really kind of cool because we got to, because the tour was earlier. We usually don't do walking tours that early in the day. We brought everybody over into the music hall so they could sit in the lobby and warm up, and I did the ghost stories in there, and we
Did
actually
you show them the Phantom?
No, Ken. I decided on this tour not to show them the
don't,
Phantom.
Don't look at it on the wall over there.
I'm going to stand here. Don't look at the
Don't
Phantom of
ask.
the music hall.
I'm not telling you.
Don't look, don't tell. And we actually went into the Hotel Portsmouth for a change, which we typically don't do. And when we went in the front room, there was a nice roaring fire.
Oh, nice.
There were seats all around the room, so it really set a nice tone for the ghost story. So we weren't outside the entire time. We were inside for about 10 minutes at each of those locations to warm up. But
That helps.
it was great because people at the end of the tour were even inviting me out for dinner. They're like, "You must be cold. Come on out
Nice.
for dinner."
Asking for hugs.
I got hugs.
Take out the
It was
dinner.
And you
great.
went and left Ken in the car.
Almost.
Trust me, I thought about it, Lou. But then I was, I couldn't leave that hot chai behind.
Right.
Yeah, right. So it was great, and thank you to everybody that had come out to that. It was one I wasn't really sure if people were going to last more than 15 minutes. We tried to keep the tour moving. Of course, Portsmouth is, you can go 5 feet and there's a ghost story. So there was an awful lot we were able to cover. That
They were
day.
really into it. So.
Yeah, they were great.
And
Everybody was
usually
fabulous.
most everybody can handle that, but this January was pretty warm. We're not used to it. That was kind of a little slap to us.
It was.
That weather this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
It had been so mild, and then
Yeah.
it got cold.
Yep.
Yeah, it got really cold. And of course, sometimes we've been out, on tours in October and it's been, like 45
Oh, yeah.
degrees and people are like, "Oh my God, it's freezing."
Oh, yeah, that happens.
Yeah, that happens too. So today on our show today, and hello to everybody. Look at all you
Look,
folks.
Texas, Newburyport.
You got everybody in there. Hello to all of you wonderful people. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, if you're not familiar with New England Curiosities, by the way, you can check us out at newenglandcuriosities.com. I'll be shortly going into my 20th year of doing ghost stories on tours for for Portsmouth very shortly, and actually started doing ghost tours back in 1994.
And other New England points.
And other New England points. We're all over New England. We have a lot of really fun things happening this year for New England Curiosities. We'll be taking our show on the road to places like West Virginia. I'll be down in Providence next month. So there's a lot of things that we have happening that's going to bring us off of the seacoast and perhaps closer to your backyard. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can find out and be first as to what's happening. We have an Oracle card deck that's going to be coming out this year as well, all about graveyards. And it seems appropriate that we might as well talk about graveyards today. And
wait a second, just because we can't let this pass, is the Kickstarter still scheduled for?
Kickstarter is scheduled for May 1st. It's the Memento Mori Oracle, and it is a divination and history deck of some of the most famous and some of the oldest burial grounds in New England. So if you like walking through burial grounds and graveyards and ever wondered about the symbolism and kind of the spiritual aspect of it too, ghosts, this is really what this deck is going to encompass with 58 cards, and it's something that's really unique and I've been working on for about 5 years. So I'm super excited to introduce that.
The history, the mystery, and the divinatory.
We're actually going to have it printed.
Divinatory, that was impressive.
Yeah, the divinatory. All in one deck. It's
if I had a penny to give you, I would. Here you go. So we're actually having it printed in Augusta, Maine as well. So keeping it local, keeping it green, and I'm just really excited about that. So
they're gorgeous too.
You got to
check it out.
No, and Lou, you're so good. Look at you popping it right up there. There it is. You can see some images from Mount Auburn, Forest Hills, Lowell, Arlington, Vermont. It's really a wonderful spectrum of amazing monuments, stone carvings, history. You'll learn a little bit more about the gravestones themselves and the folks that are buried beneath them. And if there's a ghost story or two, we'll be sure to share that in the book as well. So we've been busy editing some of the passages in the book just this past week, and we're really just super excited, and it's going to be here before you know it. So again, you can subscribe to our newsletter to be the first to see and learn a little bit more about it. But as I mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit more about graveyards. In Portsmouth, we have something that's very, very exciting. And when I mentioned it to our tour on Saturday and brought everybody over to the site, people were very intrigued with what's about to happen there. So we've mentioned in Portsmouth that we have the African burying ground. It's the country's oldest enslaved African burying ground, dating back to 1705. It's right in downtown, and many of the graves are beneath our houses and businesses and hotels, and it was dug up.
It's hard to even picture it now because there's so many houses there.
Well, and at the time, that was the outskirts of Portsmouth, downtown Portsmouth. Too. Yeah, it was Strawberry Bank and along the Piscataqua. So when the site was dug up accidentally in 2003, they had exhumed several bodies out of there. Some were reburied, but they had kept 2. And it was just announced a few weeks ago that there is going to be some DNA testing on the remains that were dug up over there. And that hopefully will give the folks some idea a little bit more about the people that were buried there. And you have to imagine, back in the 1700s, there were no grave markers for enslaved Africans. You're very, very lucky if you were able to find any grave of theirs that is marked. There is one over in the North Cemetery in Portsmouth that's marked. There's a couple that we've seen in various places down in Newport, Rhode Island. They actually have a section of the burial ground that's called God's Little Acre for enslaved Africans in Newport, Rhode Island. And every so often we'll, pop by one and you'll just see that this was someone that was thought well enough of to be buried in with the rest of the community. Usually they were isolated like they were in Portsmouth.
Usually the exception more than the rule, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was very excited to find that they are still trying to figure out what this burial ground is all about and a little bit more about who these people were. And of course, it has been properly marked. I have to tell you, naturally, there are a lot of ghost stories within that area as well. As you know, as we walk down Court Street, everybody seems to have a story, and it's
yeah, the residents of these houses, they imagine that they have ghost stories.
They do, and we got a call from my my State Farm agent a few weeks ago,
which is on the end of the burial ground.
Her building is right right at this site pretty much, and we were going in to talk about my policy, so I stopped in to talk about my policy, and I only ended up talking about my policy for 5 minutes because she wanted to talk about the burial ground and ghosts in Portsmouth for the next 45 minutes. So it was a little bit more than I was bargaining for in that appointment, but that's okay.
How many people can say that? I go to my insurance agency and we talk about ghosts there too.
I know.
You're Roxie. Well, I can tell you this.
Oh, come on in.
Of
Let's
course.
talk it. And she was very concerned about where the building that she's in, which she went back and did the research, and it dates back to the 1940s. She actually had somebody come in and clear the space when it was dug up several years ago. They came in and did some, space clearing and some sage and all of that. So honestly, you just never know. And, people come on the tours and I think they have a preconceived notion about who your typical person is that is seeing and talking about ghosts. But I'm telling you, we have heard stories from some of the most unlikely people. So.
Well, they find you. Lawyers,
right? Oh yeah,
firemen, police, you name it.
Yeah, everybody, judges.
Judges,
Superior Court judge in Portsmouth. You'd be really surprised. So, so there'll be more to come on that. We're going to follow that story very closely, and
this would be really interesting to see the results.
Yeah, that is one of the pictures that I show on my tour. That was before the memorial was built. And when I used to show that picture, so if you can't see the picture on the screen, and if you're listening to us on podcast, it's a photograph from approximately 2003 from the GPR scan, so ground penetrating radar, and it outlines where a series of remains and coffins have been discovered. And we're looking at a little side street. So this is actually Chestnut. It's kind of like the Chestnut Street extension between State and Court Street. And come to find out, GPR revealed just on this segment of street, which is barely an acre, that there are 60 people that are buried there.
I mean, look at them all just laid out in rows.
And if you look really closely, notice the house on the left by the stop sign. And that house sold a few years ago it was just over $800,000. It's an Airbnb right now. And the GPR scan reveals the coffins are right up against the foundation of that house.
So imagine the ones that are under the house. They have to be.
So of course when they pour the foundation for that house or establish that foundation for the house, what was displaced over there?
Disturbed.
They ran into burial sites.
And when you go back, previous to 2003 and start looking at some of the handwritten accounts, this site had actually been dug up back in the 1800s several times, but the sensitivity and thought process was very different at that time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we need to build a memorial. It was like, okay, we're just going to cover this up and just work around it.
Plus, we've talked about this before with contractors and excavators and things like that. That's just a pain.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a paperwork pain. It's going
to cost them money and time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
We should have an excavator on sometime from Portsmouth and Newburyport.
I
bet they've seen something.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. We've talked to a few contractors in Portsmouth, and there was one location they said they climbed out of the hole because they experienced something supernatural, and they were done for the day.
They were done for the day. They went home.
They're like, nope, we're done. So honestly, you have no idea, particularly if you're digging in a city as old as Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And even in New England, Native American remains, the shell mounds that you'll find over in Marblehead. There's a lot that's going on beneath the surface. And Portsmouth, this was when I first started showing this picture to people on the tours. They couldn't believe it. They're like, we're standing right there. And there's the memorial today.
Opposite view.
But also keep in mind, when you're looking at this memorial picture, in order to build this memorial, there was also some disturbance of the ground that was there as well. So it was really and it still is quite the amazing stop on our Saturday night tour. This is where we actually our next to last stop, and people sometimes just stand there silently, just contemplating, what's beneath their feet, and you have cars whizzing by you, and Portsmouth is very bustling, anyways, and then just to imagine, just how different it was, and how almost forgotten.
But I don't mean to minimize this at any point, but this is New England, right?
It is New England.
There's stuff under your feet.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Wherever you
they're
go.
still finding this surprises every day.
Yep.
So,
But yeah, I mean, also all those burials from the last picture were all disturbed to do this,
right.
and they're reinterred now in a chamber.
So there's a large chamber down where the large group of people are that you can see, and it's a hollow chamber, and that's where what was disturbed was placed in there. Everything was cataloged and chronicled.
Above ground chamber?
It's
under.
It's underground.
yeah.
So if you lift the circle, it's a really nice.
Yeah,
nice
it's got this
space.
huge stone circular tablet over it.
There's the construction
Yes.
time in that.
And you can see the circular tablet in the picture.
Yeah,
there.
I remember going down there during construction on our tours, and again trying to talk to people about what was happening right there. And they were bringing field trips down there.
Yeah, school
and,
kids.
and explaining kind of the process of what was happening. And it's still even to this day, we're not done with this story from 2003. We're still trying to figure it out and what's going on and the extent of it. And
This is still just a small portion of the burial ground.
Valerie Cunningham from the Black Heritage Trail in Portsmouth maintains that there's probably 300 people underneath the block.
Wow.
That's right there, and that's very substantial. And to walk through this part of town, it's almost hard to conceive of again today because it's modern Portsmouth. However, if you take a look at the houses, you'll see they're 1800s.
Yep.
Largely in this block. So
Newer than the cemetery.
So it's a secret that's been underneath our streets for a long time. And of course, there are so many secrets that are still being revealed. And one story, if you are listening from the southern New England area in Connecticut, they've actually, look at this. Isn't that incredible? Yeah, so if you can't, if you're listening on podcast, Lou has brought up a photograph of one of the first excavations of a coffin and remains from the dig site there. And again, keep in mind, this is a busy street that people were driving over. And this was, right below them, people, walking above it. And there's, there's a lot of different opinions that people have had, different ways people have reacted to this site on our tour. But it's hallowed ground, no matter what way you look at it.
And it's a good opportunity to give pause and contemplate, what went on. Yeah.
And to understand what slavery was like here in New England. And when I first started talking about that in Portsmouth, a lot of people would debate with me. Oh, no, we didn't have. We didn't have slavery up here. And, that was a southerly thing. Indentured servants, and we can tell you, where in town they were sold. There's the chamber.
Yeah, before the cover was on.
Before the cover was on, and you can see some of the remains, and those coffins were actually made from a meeting house for Africans in Kittery.
Really?
And they had saved the timbers when it was taken down, and they had decided to donate the wood for this memorial site. So it's really, really just incredible, really amazing just to stand on that site. And if you're any kind of intuitive or empathetic, you can really feel the energy that's there. Yeah, it's really something else. And the other story that I wanted to mention is one that has just come to light in Connecticut. And digging beneath someone's house, you talk about skeletons in the closet, we have skeletons in the basement. Ugh. And initially it was believed that they had found 2 skeletons in construction of this house in December. And come to find out, they just found 2 more.
Wow.
So now there's 4 skeletons in the basement.
In this basement.
And they are believed to be Revolutionary War soldiers. Perhaps there might be British soldiers there as well. It's in a town called Ridgefield, Connecticut, which is in Fairfield County. The house itself is from the 1700s. And they pretty much pulled these skeletons out from underneath the foundation. And one of what I think is the most amazing finds in regards to this dig is one of them had been wearing a coat or some kind of shirt that had 28 brass buttons.
Oh.
And they were able to find them as part of the site. Also, in examining the remains that were found underneath this house, they believe that they were very robust young men and most likely were soldiers. They're currently being analyzed and they're trying to figure out exactly who these people might be. It's a private home, so you can't go and explore it. But it's been making all of the news, so we're going to have to find out what's happening with that reveal and as they examine the remains. And it's very difficult to piece that together and determine, were they, on the revolutionary side, were they British soldiers?
No, they feel examining the buttons might help them identify.
Correct. And they are
what they were wearing.
Right. They are severely corroded,
Wow.
but they can tell that they are brass, and they're hoping to get some sort of insignia off of them so they can determine, who they were.
Is it possible the building imprinted on a graveyard or a collection of burials? Have they explored the rest of the
Well, what's interesting...
property?
Well, they have been exploring, particularly now since they just found the other two a few weeks ago. What's fascinating about that is it doesn't necessarily have to be a burial ground. What you might have are people who may have gotten into a skirmish, who may have died on the walk, and they would typically bury them right where they fell. And
Right.
you'll find that all over, particularly Concord, Massachusetts, has a lot of information about that, where it wasn't any particular notable site, yet there
So
were people that were buried there.
That would be a battlefield, and there were several casualties, and they just buried them right there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have the ability to preserve them and take them along.
Yeah.
No, and there would be no coffins or anything in
Right.
particular.
And they haven't found coffins with these?
No, they haven't found
Which-
coffins.
Good indication right there.
That is a good indication. However, they are buried in the typical, east facing. So if they were to rise up out of their graves, they would be facing
were
to the
they?
east. Yeah,
Oh,
which is really
interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
So it's really incredible that this has just been unearthed, and then who knows what else is under there. So in the span of 2 months,
know,
they
they just
found
found
two
two
more.
more.
And there's potentially, who knows, there could
Right.
even be more.
Did they get sick and die on the march? Was there a battle there? It's like, wow.
Yeah, what were the conditions? And again,
Yeah.
it's going to take a lot of extensive details of looking at the skeletons and examining the remains to see if they can still even figure that out, if they were sick. But at least they can tell us they were they were robust, they were young, they
kind
were
of tell
soldiers.
their age.
And imagine
I mean, a coat with 29 buttons, they were probably fairly important.
they probably were.
Brass buttons.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Look at this.
Yeah, Lou's on it. Lou
Well,
is
that's from
pushing the buttons
Ridgefield
there.
Press. That looks kind of outside, not inside, but it's from a Ridgefield Press article about the soldiers.
Oh yeah.
But they found in the basement and under the foundation.
Under
so
the
foundation was
foundation.
like sitting on top of them.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
Oh yeah, so they may have dug from the outside.
Yeah.
So they didn't, it just kind of indicates they didn't even know when they built that they were there.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. So
It seems.
imagine you're living in this house all these years, and you're like, I got this construction project I have to do, and you start deconstructing your basement, and there they are.
What a surprise.
Isn't that incredible?
I mean, wow. Yeah, you just never know.
you really
I
don't.
mean, it probably doesn't even have to be an old house.
No.
Even people who don't travel in these circles, you find out people are buried in your basement. It's gonna give you some pause.
Yeah,
I would say so.
to say the least.
All right, so
Yeah,
the
just a
article
little bit.
states that they may be remains from the Battle of Ridgefield in
Okay.
1777
Okay.
between the American and British forces during the American Revolutionary War. The main battle was fought in the village of Ridgefield, Connecticut on April 27th, 1777. See what details here, but apparently there was a battle down there.
Well, and I wonder if that was the actual battle site or in proximity to where that happened. What this?
No, that
site
would make a lot of sense because they would, after the battle, they'd go pick up the
Well, and
the bodies.
oftentimes battles ended in a chase.
Right.
The retreating people
True.
would try to exit, and they'd be followed.
Right,
So it could have been wouldn't have to be on the main battlefield
right.
necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, so like it could be that similar situation that we found in Concord, where they were killed and buried right where they lay. And that's that was without without ceremony. You know, any of these situations, particularly ones that I've researched, and again, there may be other theories on this, but they just wanted to dispose of the dead as quickly as possible. So essentially, just digging the hole, placing them in there, perhaps the quick prayer, and then onwards. There was no time for ceremony.
They were able to give it enough thought, though, to bury him to the east.
Right.
In this article is an interesting side note about Sybil's ride. Sybil Ludington was a 16-year-old daughter of a Dutchess County Colonel Henry Ludington, who performed a significant service for the Patriot cause before the battle. An exhausted messenger arrived in the Ludington house to inform them of the British advance on Danbury. She volunteered to ride through the country to mount up the militia, comparable to the ride of Paul Revere, to raise the alarm at Lexington and Concord. She rode more than 40 miles through a rainy night, alerting Patriots and avoiding Loyalists to raise troops. Ludington's men were too late to assist at Ridgefield, but they formed part of the force that harassed the British on their return to the beach.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
16 years old, just hopping on a horse, covering 40 miles.
40 miles.
40 miles.
Yeah, let's take a ride to Quincy on a horse tonight in the rain.
On this cold, rainy night.
With enemy troops.
Yeah, encroaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
She believed that much in the cause.
Well,
Someone had to do it.
And many did. I mean, I'm
Someone
sure
else who needs a statue.
I know.
Right. Who's the woman we talked about a couple weeks ago?
It was in Newcastle. She was dumping out the water.
Dumping out
She
the
dumped
water
out the
casks.
British off the British ship.
They went into town for provisions.
Woman needs it. We have to take this on. That woman needs a statue.
Yeah,
this needs a GoFundMe right here.
It does. Mrs. Trefethen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Trefethen, I remember.
I mean, that's a hero right there.
Yeah, she was a hero.
She could have very easily been killed. She didn't know what she didn't know what the results of that were going to be. Yeah.
Luckily, they were in a hurry and they couldn't retaliate, so they had to leave.
Yep.
But
Good for her.
In this situation with this 16-year-old, so imagine, though, think about it. Her father was probably fighting, her brothers. I mean, think about her just for her family, just representing, making sure that they had, warning enough.
I mean, and their lives are on the
troops.
line.
They are.
In Ridgefield, the Keeler Tavern is now a local museum which features a British cannonball lodged in the side of the building.
Oh, wow.
All right, road trip.
I want to see.
Lou.
No, I do. I want to
trip.
see this.
Yeah, educational markers are maintained through various points of significance throughout the town, including locations where David Worcester was mortally wounded and Benedict Arnold was pinned under his shot horse.
Wow.
Ooh.
A stone marker near the side of the barricade where both the Patriot and British troops were buried together. In New Haven, a public square was named for Worcester, so a general that was involved. But apparently Benedict Arnold was there, too. He got pinned under his horse.
Well, I mean, before he sold out the country, he was a hero and well respected.
Yeah. Well, that's what made him such a notarized traitor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because all the good things he did, and then all of a sudden he just changed his mind.
Yeah.
Sold out.
We get so disconnected from this history.
We do.
Like we were talking the burial ground in Portsmouth and revolutionary history. People, it's America. We don't understand that there were people dropped on the street outside or, shot and killed and buried and, right there. And 16-year-old girls were riding 40 miles to alert troops. It's
such a
incredible.
different time and so removed from it.
And really, the time was different. They were committed.
Well,
You just don't get that. You can't imagine the whole, just a whole part of a country or a whole new country trying to be built. Everybody being on the same page.
Well, and again, think of how involved everybody was. I mean, we're, right now as a country, we're removed from, any wartime activity that's happening in the world. We go about our day-to-day business. Here in New England, they had no choice. I mean, the British could come up to your house and take whatever they wanted.
And they did.
And
and we think of war as uniforms and tanks and and that type of thing. This type of war was neighbors and you were shot in your home. You were shot in your backyard.
Right.
It's
They just
amazing.
marched on in and torched homes on the way, burned villages and towns.
Yeah, there were revolutionaries standing up to British troops coming with the red coats and the formations with the guns, and these guys just stood up to them.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
16-year-old girl stood up to
A
them.
whole different kind of warfare. I mean, you knew they were coming, too. You heard them marching and drumming and fifing as they came, and oh, okay, we got to get ready.
But it was very personal. It wasn't like they were enemy soldiers. It was like,
Neighbor against neighbor
Sam.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe down the road.
Yep.
Joe got shot today.
Yep. Neighbor against neighbor sometimes.
Yep. Kith and kin. It's true. Very, very true. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to take a quick break, and we have some more grave stories from you. We're going to come back with a man from beyond the grave in Portland. He died and came back, and where is he now? So stay tuned. You're listening to Wicked Curious.
For the best in curious entertainment, you have to check out New England Curiosities, located in the historic city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. New England Curiosities offers tales and tours of folklore, ghosts, and mysterious history, with author and historian Roxie Zwicker, New Hampshire's longest-running and original ghost tour. Roxie has been entertaining the locals, visitors from away, and curious souls since 1994. New England Curiosities has been offering tours and special haunted events since 2002. Highly respected and thoroughly entertaining. You'll be talking about your experience for months to come. Discover why New England Curiosities is consistently on top of travel and tourism lists. Yankee Magazine calls the Shadows and Stones Graveyard Tour one of New England's top 5 cemetery tours. The Boston Globe says an experience with New England Curiosities is one of the 3 best alternatives to visiting Salem, Massachusetts. From scenic trolley rides to walking tours and speaking engagements, there's something for everyone. So join New England Curiosities and experience why they are consistently featured in the media, including television appearances on the History Channel and the Travel Channel. Check out the latest legendary tours and events from New England Curiosities at newenglandcuriosities.com. And be sure to like New England Curiosities on Facebook.
Greetings to you, traveler. My name is Roxie Zwicker, and you may have heard of me being referred to as Maine's Mystery Maven, or even New England's Scary Godmother. Creativity and curiosity are in my blood, always has been and is a way of life. And I really want to share my creative projects with you. Just under 20 years ago, I began New England Curiosities, a tour and event company based in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And it's given me the opportunity to connect with so many people. And for the past 15 years, I've been serving the seacoast of New Hampshire as a metaphysical instructor and reader. 2 of the things on my path that I've committed to are helping to empower spiritual seekers and to share stories from and with curious folks. I know that community is powerful and we can create so much together. One of my projects is Wicked Curious Radio, a radio show that asks, "You are wicked curious, aren't you?" And also The Woodland Alchemy, which is a film that brings its viewers to a place of imagination, the unknown, and the mysterious. If you would like to help keep these projects afloat and keep us moving forward, you can check us out on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Roxie Zwicker, you can find all of the magical things that we are doing. You can check out all the different levels of subscription and join us on our journey. So again, it's patreon.com/Roxie Zwicker, ROXIEZWICKER. And we thank you so much for joining our curious journey. Welcome back to Wicked Curious Radio. Perhaps you are finding us on 102.9 FM HD2. We know you're finding us on Facebook Live today. If you're listening to us in podcast form on iTunes, Buzzsprout, or SoundCloud, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that way you don't miss an episode. I am Roxie Zwicker from New England Curiosities, here with the amazing Ken and the Professor Lou Blassie, keeping this show afloat. And it looks like we have some extra commentary there about Sybil Luddington. A commemorative statue, Lou, of Sybil Luddington, sculpted by Anna Hyatt Huntington, was erected near Carmel, New York in 1961, and there are also historical markers erected along the road.
Good, she deserves it.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you for that, Lynn. Thank you so much.
I wonder how it ties to New York.
Well, they're only right next door to each other.
Right.
So I'm sure she probably ended up in New York.
Probably part of the ride.
Yeah, she probably ended up in parts of New York on that ride. So that's fantastic.
Good. We got to get this. What's this other woman's name again?
Trefethen.
Oh, Trefethen. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to get this done.
Well,
This is something we should take on.
There's a school named after her in Newcastle. It's the grammar school.
Still needs a statue.
There should be a statue down by the water.
Down by the water.
With her with a hatchet and a,
and a broken cask.
broken cask at her feet.
Yes. Definitely.
Absolutely.
I agree.
She had a water party.
She did.
Yeah.
She did. Well, and that's what we try to do here at New England Curiosities, is to bring all those stories that perhaps you haven't heard about to the surface.
Don't want them to get lost.
We don't. And speaking of bringing something to the surface, we have another story from the grave. So we're going to work our way up to Portland, Maine. And this story I actually found through Channel 13. Very, very well written and documented, and it's definitely ghoulish, and they've got some ghoulish ways of describing what happened about this big story.
The more ghoulish, the better.
Yes, indeed. So it was November 1885. Big story.
1885.
1885, and no newspaper could resist the stupendous yarn. It had everything that sells: a tragic death, an empty casket, grave robbing, and a seemingly supernatural return to the living.
Nice. Coming back to life.
Ooh. The city's 3 daily broadsheets covered the unfolding mystery in real time. The Portland Daily Press, the Daily Eastern Argus, and the Portland Advertiser each had reporters burning shoe leather on the city's cobblestone streets, tracking down details and asking questions that could not be answered. A day after the sensational news broke in the local press, the story went national. To the New York World, the St. Louis Dispatch, the Macon Beacon, and the Bangor Daily Whig and Courier. And that's Whig,
The Daily
W-H-I-G.
Really?
Yes. All carried
That
early
term doesn't
accounts
get
of
used
the
much
story.
anymore.
No, you never hear
What
the
is it?
Whig.
Is that just a
It was the newspaper.
spelling of the time, or?
Well, I'm sure it originated from a newspaper that was probably
Well, I know
published in the
there was
1700s.
From England and maybe carried over here, there was a Whig party.
Oh, yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
sure.
Which, before there was the Republican Democrat, there was like the Whigs and the Republicans, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it was
I'm going
something
to quote you. on
Whigs
They
and
were
the
like
Democrats.
like a political party.
Yep.
But as hometown reporters picked away at the fabulous narrative, it began to crumble, leaving behind another mystery that still stands to this day. Why? So we'll tell you about the breaking news of the undead. The Advertiser first broke the news November 10th, 1885. Its triple-deck headline read, "Resurrected, astounding case of suspended animation. Return Joseph Dyer from the dead."
Astounding.
Astounding. The original article's sole source was named only as Mr. Marston of the Home for Aged Men on Danforth Street. It did not say how he came by the information, only that Mr. Marston vouches for the truth of the narrative. As the story went, a young Cape Elizabeth farmer named Joseph Dyer Jr. was coming across the bridge from South Portland in a wagon. Near the end, a drunken man scared his horse, and Dyer fell from the cart, hitting his head. And then he died. 3 days later, Dyer's heartbroken fiancée and weeping parents watched his casket go into the ground at Evergreen Cemetery. Death usually being a final state of affairs, they thought he had crossed over into the great beyond. But they were wrong.
No.
After more than a year, Dyer's mother began to have vivid dreams that her son was not dead. She had his coffin dug up and opened at midnight. What else are you going to dig up a coffin and open it at midnight?
Let's go at
At
midnight.
3 o'clock
Really?
in the afternoon,
Yeah, exactly.
broad daylight.
Not during the
you
middle of the
know.
day
No,
when
midnight.
the sun's out. Midnight.
No, I mean that's the only time.
When
to
it's
do
got to
it.
be done, it's got to be done.
What would be creepier?
What would be
So quick.
creepier?
Let's get a group together at midnight.
So of course they opened up the coffin at midnight as the bell tolled, and it was empty.
Gone.
Her son's body was missing, and an hour later, Dyer walked through her door and into her arms.
After a year.
Joseph Dyer, who for 14 months had been dead to his family and the world, appeared before his parents and resumed his place in the family, the Advertiser wrote. Upon returning from the hereafter, Dyer immediately sent word to his fiancée, Blanche Edwards.
Blanche.
That'd be the first person I'd contact.
When reunited, Blanche. I'm going to call Blanche. When reunited, he saw she was still wearing the ring he gave her. And they resumed their betrothal without much discussion. The Advertiser reported Dyer was now back to farming in Cape Elizabeth, which, by the way, I personally love Cape Elizabeth so much.
It's
So many ghost
nice.
stories.
There's still some farmland out there.
It's amazing. If you have not been to Cape Elizabeth, you must go. There's lighthouses. There's a haunted beach. Refer to prior shows.
So was anyone wondering where he was for this 14 months?
Well, hold on.
Where the hell were you?
I know. It's very exciting.
Vegas.
I know, Vegas.
Which wouldn't have been much fun back then.
Climbed out of
No,
a grave and
definitely.
didn't come right home.
Yeah.
All right, so hold on. Here we go. According to the paper, Dyer told his family and Edwards that he had only been mostly dead at the time of his burial. So, okay, so who was mostly dead? I'm just going to throw out this trivia at you.
Dyer?
No. What movie?
Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. Thank
Mostly
you, Lou.
dead, yeah. I was like, this
You've
is
been mostly dead all day.
mostly dead all day. Going the route of Monty Python here
That's
now.
right.
Yep.
I got better.
He's only mostly dead.
He was only
Right.
mostly dead. He described it as a state of suspended animation. All right, so the following words I'm about to say, I'm going to be trying very hard to get into my daily lexicon. So, like macabre, like New England Curiosities, bringing back the word macabre.
Yep.
I have to bring back this phrase.
I'm all in on this.
Okay. In a stroke of ghoulish luck.
Great. Yeah.
I'm going to
fine.
use that.
We have to use that.
Ghoulish
Next time,
luck.
Ghoulish
next time,
luck.
yeah, I'm going to say, what a stroke of ghoulish,
Ghoulish luck.
I want to use this.
I'm going to say it one more time. In a stroke of ghoulish luck, he said, a pair of physicians dug him up in the nick of time. The doctors were looking for a fresh, undiseased corpse to dissect.
Okay. See, I was going to challenge that, but that makes sense.
So he was
Because that's
saved.
what they did back then.
That is what they did.
So he was
back
saved by grave robbers, otherwise he
then.
might have
was.
suffocated.
Yep. After spiriting him away, they discovered
I bet their families are still telling stories that night.
After spiriting him away, they discovered that Dyer was still alive. The pair nursed him back to health over the better part of a year before Dyer made his way home. Quote, it is understood that the young man is reticent about where he had been and what he had been doing since his recovery, the Advertiser wrote. This is very natural for the medical men who got possession of his body in so questionable a manner would hardly come to have their names known.
Yeah.
The Advertiser made no attempt to verify the story.
So they had to keep this on the down low, so they didn't want to get
course.
busted for digging a grave up.
Of course.
Whole new meaning to the down low.
Right. Way down low,
Yeah.
6 feet
Wait,
down.
6 feet down low. So we're going to chase the mystery. The Argus and the Press had the story the following day. Both papers lifted the main tale, almost verbatim from the Advertiser article. They did manage to add some fresh fact-checking and a snide dose of skepticism. The first thing they revealed was that Mr. Marston, the Advertiser's sole source, had heard the tale from Elizabeth Edwards, a young woman working for him, and she had heard it from her sister, Blanche, Dyer's fiancée. The Argus, which cost 3 cents at the time, sent reporters out in search of Dyer's parents. They were thought to be living in Deering, Maine, then part of Westbrook. A search of Woodford's and Morrell's, which is the names, by the way, corner turned up nothing. The press scoured burial records at Evergreen Cemetery. No one named Joseph Dyer was in the books or in the ground there, they reported. Editors of both papers revealed they received messy, anonymous.
Easy for me to say.
It's Ron's vibe still in the room. That's a Ron thing. They received messy, anonymous letters riddled with spelling errors confirming the details of the original tale.
Well,
In what was perhaps an understatement, the Argus article ended. Quote, the story given above does equal anything given in the sensational novels of the day. But there is still a possibility that it is not exactly true. Over the course of the next week, all 3 papers combed Portland, Westbrook, and Cape Elizabeth looking for Dyer and his parents, and they found no one. A few locals say they vaguely remember a man dying after a fall from a wagon, but that was all. Reporters found Blanche Edwards working at the home of a well-known painter, Harrison Bird Brown, on Danforth Street. They described her as about 20 years old, Welsh, and credible. A sort of dreamy expression rests on her face, the Argus paper wrote. The Advertiser reported she appears honest and thinks she is telling the truth. Edwards stuck to her story but said she did not know where Dyer worked in Cape Elizabeth and could not remember exactly where his parents lived. The Argus went so far as to hire a coach to drive her around Deering to see if she might recognize the Dyer's house, and that did not help.
Yeah.
The only tangible proof Edwards could produce were photographs of the Dyer family and a few letters written to her from her fiancé's mother. The Advertiser and the Argus admitted the story was probably made up, but they kept repeating the salacious details anyway. They both stated that they believed Edwards was forced into lying by some larger nefarious force. Nefarious. I love the words in this. It's so good. No one, of course, takes any stock in the improbable story of resurrection, wrote the Advertiser, but it is thought that there may be some hidden motive in telling such a tale.
Hidden motive.
Hidden motive. So the end of the story. So the final chapters here now. The Argus and the Advertiser gave up on the story after only a few days, and only the press saw it through to the end. A week after the story broke on November 18th, they published an update saying they found a man named Dyer in Oxford County who had a brother by the same last name working on a farm in Cape Elizabeth. This Dyer raises vegetables, also selling them in Portland, the press wrote. It was a thin tidbit of information, but it kept the story on the front page and presumably sold papers. The saga came to an end a few days later on November 20th. One paragraph item near the bottom of the page, first page, laid it all out. The story of the resurrection of Joseph Dyer, as told by Blanche Edwards, has at least been proved to be a falsehood wantonly told by the girl, it read. A press reporter discovered the photos Edwards had of Dyer and his family were actually stolen from a house in Deering where she used to work. When confronted with this information, the story said she confessed to making the whole thing up. Edwards said she penned the letters supposedly written to her by Dyer's mother, too, and she mailed them to herself. Edwards' parents, who had credited her story, the article ended, were much mortified when she confessed her fraud. None of Portland's journalists tried to find out why Edwards had made up her story, nor did the city papers admit any culpability in spreading the unsubstantiated tall tale in the first place. They were content to blame Edwards and sell papers. A modern search of newspaper indexes finds no further mention of the young woman who made the story up of the resurrected fiancé. Like Joseph Dyer, when the papers were through with her, Edwards vanished.
Oh. So what's the backstory here?
So just when people, I guess people were always looking for their 5 minutes of fame, huh?
Yeah, back in the 1880s, sure, why not? Oh, there it is. Lou's got it.
The Dyer fraud.
The Dyer fraud. Yep, there it is.
The lone paragraph.
Blanche Edwards.
She confessed.
Why would she do this?
I don't know. Did she
Profit from it, or maybe just fame or ego?
Looking for some, ego, notoriety.
Yeah.
People.
I mean, is that like, a fake Facebook, process?
These days, sure.
A whole, fake profile.
They've got all kinds of attention and.
She was just trying to get her parents off her back for having a fiance.
Yeah, right. Strange motives people have.
Very strange motives. Oh, it's a good story though.
It is.
Yeah.
So we have to remember. What was the catchphrase in there? Come on.
It's a stroke of ghoulish luck.
A stroke of ghoulish luck.
Ghoulish luck.
I like it. That and nefarious.
Yep.
That and nefarious. Now we have been.
This is your first fake news story.
Probably not.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, no problem.
Probably one of the earliest.
One of the earliest. Although Ken and I have been to Evergreen Cemetery.
It's a really
in
nice
Portland,
cemetery.
and it is a garden style cemetery. It's pretty fantastic. They
Good
have,
size. It's big.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how many acres they have there. And one of the features is the chapel, which has kind of like a carport. It's a beautiful stone chapel.
Right.
So we went and spent the day. This was a few years back, and we had come up to a set of doors on the ground. They were big iron doors, and they had a date on it. It was 1800 something, and there was a big lock and a chain on it. Very weathered, really cool, but it was really nice. I remember it was a beautiful summer day.
It was a nice day. Yeah, sunny, not too hot.
The light was shining down through the doors.
Yeah.
Big gap in the door.
So there's a huge gap, and there were all these monuments around the doors. So I got down on the ground and peered through the doors, and you could actually see there was a staircase that was going down from the door, and you could see black and white tiles on the floor, black and white marble tiles. And you could walk through and you could see that there were actually people buried up against the wall. So it was an underground tomb that had stairs that went down.
I get down there and shine my light through the opening and everything.
And you could, I mean, it
An
was
underground tomb for holding over the winter
family.
months?
Well, no, it was for holding.
For that family.
This was a
for
family
that
tomb.
family.
Okay. It was a family tomb.
There was a row of them, but this one you could see into.
Yeah. And the doors were just enough that you could peek through and see. And it was beautifully preserved.
The nice steps going down and the
Beautiful
tile.
floor. I mean, it wasn't a dirt floor. It had walls where people were entombed. It was just incredible. And it was just a little hill.
How would you go about visiting something like that? I mean, what if a family member wanted to?
Well, it was lock and key, so I'm sure you could talk to someone at the cemetery and get permission if you could prove that you were related to the people that were buried.
Whoever's running the cemetery would probably have like sets of keys and could get you in there, and because you could probably still bury a family member in there, I'm sure.
Do people run cemeteries anymore? Or?
They do. And in fact, my friend Brenda from the Gravestone Girls, she was on our show, I think last year. She goes all over the country, and sometimes she will post one of the rooms at the cemetery, usually in one of the administration buildings, that has walls and walls of keys that open up the mausoleums and the tombs. And I mean, they're old. They're over 100 years old, and they're all just hanging there.
Yeah, sometimes a church might run the cemetery, or a cemetery association, or the city even.
I bet Evergreen, though, probably still has the keys to the
I mean, it's still being used in some places. It's not.
Well,
it's not so old that it's not being used.
Yeah, the cemetery is just this tomb is no longer being used.
As far as we know, I mean,
they all died in the 1800s.
Yeah.
There was nothing new on that side that we were looking at. But can you imagine just looking through the doors and seeing this whole underground world in the cemetery?
That's what we do.
That is what we do.
A lot of people don't think about it. They'll walk by. We're gonna go. Look, you can see in there. There's a big gap. So we go over.
I'm surprised you just didn't work your way in there. Since
there are
contact somebody. No, I meant contact somebody and get in there.
I was going to say work my way in with a bolt cutter. No,
no. It doesn't strike me as the type of person to go, okay, that was nice looking through the door.
There's no bolt cutters in our car. What are you talking about?
No, we don't have bolt cutters. No, we would never. I did.
No, not with those.
What's the name of the family?
God, I can't even.
Yeah, geez, we have to go look at our pictures.
It's been, I don't know, probably. I think I was just finishing up my book on York County, so it's probably been 7 years since we've been to Evergreen.
We've peeked into other tombs that have openings and holes, and we've seen.
Well, yes, we've seen bones and all kinds of. Yeah, we've got some great photos of other things that we've seen inside of tombs. But this was just, I mean, it looked
that one
like
we got a good picture with the flash. The whole opening was so big, and it just lit up the whole interior of the tomb, and there's just bones everywhere.
But it didn't look derelict. It
was clean. There was
that one was yes.
There was no debris in there. You could see it. It was. I can't even imagine.
I mean, it's probably. I mean, who knows how long it's been, but it's probably as the family left it. They inter the bodies using like drawers or shelves.
So picture an underground mausoleum. With just this beautiful marble floor, and you'd go down this set of granite stairs, and it's just incredible.
They're actually fairly common.
Well, but people don't realize that because sometimes there aren't doors there. The doors have either rotted away or they've covered it in earth. So
a lot of times they'll cover them over so that people don't break in.
But think about the cost. I mean,
oh sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant building.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible. And back in the day, it still would have been super expensive.
Oh yeah, it would have been for people with money for sure.
Oh yeah. When you look at, I was talking to Brenda from the Gravestone Girls because we met for lunch at the Grog. By the way, Lou, we had gone to the Grog.
I like the Grog.
We're plotting taking over the world, and we sat there talking about dead people.
It's a good place to plot to take over the world.
It was perfect. Nice beverages to do that with.
Yes.
But she had mentioned just how expensive it was back in the day to be buried at a place like Mount Auburn or certainly at Evergreen. And she was talking about today, she has a friend that works at Mount Auburn, and it is, you're talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars just to be buried like in a main row. If you want to be buried like down the back of Mount Auburn in a small plot, it's like $35,000 for like one little stone, on the plot. That's for the plot.
That's for
There's
the
no
plot,
stone.
let alone headstone.
One little space.
Yeah.
Like, and way down the back, not in one of those, famous areas.
Just cremate me and keep me on the shelf. So
That's open, the bookshelf, but next to the TV, whatever.
spread me in Newburyport Harbor, or
Right.
something like that.
Well, your Viking funeral.
My Viking funeral.
Your Viking
Even
funeral.
better.
I
Yes,
think
even
permits might be tough for that, but I'd still like to do it.
I'd look into it. They could make it part of what's
That's
what's the Newburyport summer celebration they do there?
Oh yeah,
Is it a Harbor Fest?
no, there is a Harbor Fest, but no, you're talking about Yankee Homecoming.
Yes,
Yep.
that'd be great for Yankee.
Yeah, my own homecoming.
Right.
Lou's homecoming.
So that they can tow the boat out and
Have the whole
parade
town with flaming arrows and the Route 1 bridge
Parade of
shooting
sail.
down as me as it come by.
coming down the river. That'd be
Yep.
great.
Somebody could make money off
A
of
toast
that.
from Michael's Harborside.
There you go.
Yeah,
Nice.
way out,
Yes.
That would be great. I love it. Should do something like that.
That's
Do
right.
something like that in Portsmouth.
I think with enough money, you could arrange
They wouldn't
it.
let me do it while the piping plovers are.
Oh, no, you
the
can't have
piping
them.
plovers.
Yeah, that'd be a problem.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, though.
Yeah,
The entire world revolves around the piping plovers out there.
it really
right.
does.
Yeah, no, it does. It's
The
incredible.
sandpipers and everything, yeah.
They only close 7 or 8 miles of beach through August for the piping plovers. That's all.
Well, it seems like every time Ken and you and I went down, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go check it out." No, beach closed.
No,
and like
beach closed.
and so we
Plovers.
just stopped going.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, it's too funny. So
God knows we need those birds.
I guess they're still endangered. I don't know.
are they still? They must be, obviously. If
Well, they're protected
their
anyway, yeah.
nesting sites. So.
So they rope them off.
Yeah, the
close
reservation of the 9 miles of the are there 9 miles of the reservation? I think there's 9 miles. Of the 9 miles, about 7 are closed off
Wow.
most of the summer.
It's crazy.
The mosquitoes here are pretty rough after the sun goes down.
Greenheads.
I must say.
Oh.
In the greenheads.
Greenheads.
Oh no, thank you. No, thank you. I'm
We were
totally
there
good.
one day when the sun was going down and we were getting eaten alive.
Well, I was trying
Running
to
from the
take
car.
pictures of the sunset, but you open the door and they're already on the glass.
Yep.
They're like they know you're in there. They can
Yeah,
smell the
s-
blood through the car.
And I'm told, and this might be just, reminiscing or romancing, but I'm told the greenhead thing is a lot less severe than it used to be, which is kind of scary. Because the greenheads will get you.
Yeah.
Oh no, thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'm totally good.
Yeah, they got a heck of a bite too. They hurt.
Yeah.
Well, so what would we call that?
What? Oh,
Ghoulishly.
a stroke of ghoulish luck? That wouldn't be.
Well,
Certainly not. It
well,
would not be lucky to be bitten.
Well, no, not to be bitten. Be a stroke of ghoulish luck to get out of there without being bitten.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. There you go. There you
The
go.
nefarious little things.
Nefarious little things. So,
Plotting against your blood.
Just the females, too.
oh,
Right.
jeez, of
Yeah.
course. So we do have a couple of events that are coming up that we wanted to share with you before we finish up today. Of course, coming up 1 week from today at the Haunted Wyndham Restaurant, which is really super haunted, we are teaming up with the New England Ghost Project, and I will be doing a haunted dinner talk. So you can get steak tips or you can get some yummy chicken and get to hear about witchcraft in New England outside of Salem, Massachusetts, people who are wrongly accused of witchcraft and the ghost stories and superstitions that were left in their wake. It's one of my favorite presentations to do. So if you're
Nice old haunted house.
so if you're not doing anything next Monday night, come and join us. And tickets for that are actually at the New England Ghost Project. So letter N, the letter E, ghostproject.com. It's quite affordable for a fun evening of entertainment. And then
It's always a good time.
It's always a good time. And then that Friday, we'll be doing a rare investigation, which again, we only do a few of these a year, over at the Old South Meeting House along Portsmouth Waterfront in Ye Olde Red Light District. And we still do have a handful of tickets left for that, so you can check that out on our website at newenglandcuriosities.com. And that's always just, it's such a fun building to go through, to go up in
Yeah.
Ken will be there up leading people to the clock tower.
To the clock tower and
And checking out the
And
view from there
beyond.
and beyond.
yeah.
Can you see the window that all the girls used to dance in from the clock tower?
You can see a lot of windows from the clock tower.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
I think that's why Ken's up there. He's still looking for the ladies in the
That's right.
windows.
Look for the ladies of the evening.
How come we don't get ghosts of them?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. We have lots of stories of them
Actually?
down along the waterfront.
Especially at the old Molly's building.
In that window above. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the window, for some reason not in the window that we know of.
No, all you can see in that window is a
But,
staircase over on Bow
Like,
Street.
again, the old Molly's building. They'll
Oh,
be
the old Molly's building.
They'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
waving out the window at passersby still.
Can't swing a dead cat without hitting a ghost at Molly's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is very true. So, of course, make sure that you visit our website, subscribe to our newsletter, NewEnglandCuriosities.com. If you're listening to us on Facebook Live, make sure that you like and follow our page. And, of course, we're so glad that you were here with us today. Hello and goodbye to everybody that was in our chat. And
Thanks
remember,
for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. And to always stay wicked curious.